Chair for the Open Space Advisory Committee here in Superior, and we'd like to welcome you all to this joint session with the Open Space Advisory Board in Louisville. So to bring this meeting to order, what we're first going to do is a roll call, but instead of your traditional who's here, who's not, we know who's here, who's not. What I'd like to do is for us to just take the time for those of us here at the table as well as right behind me, and just do a quick introduction, if you will. Your name, how long you've been on the committee, and if there's a particular area of expertise that you bring to your committee, that would be fantastic. Go on ahead.
I'm Rita Trainer. I'm the vice chair of OSAC. I don't know about any particular expertise that I bring. Like Susan, I pull weeds.
Spreadsheets.
Finance, budget, resourcing. Yes.
Joanne Maneri, I've been on OSAC about a year and a half, and I'm with the Wildlife Encouragement Team.
Christy Verbeck, I've been on Superior OSAC for a couple years, and I am the wildfire liaison.
Mike McDonald, I've been on OSAC since 2021, and I guess some areas that I'm working in are Coyote Ridge and the Marshall Fire Remembrance Project.
I'm Susan McEachern. I'm chair of OSAB, and I've been on the board for 4 years, and I I organize the volunteer weed whackers for Louisville, and I'm also a volunteer naturalist for Boulder County Parks and Open Space.
Todd Gleason, a 30-year resident of Louisville, so I got burned out and I moved over to Superior, where I've been for 3 years. I'm a biologist by training and work with Mike on Coyote Ridge projects and with Rita on trail ranking and trail continuity.
So my name is Mark Paletti, and I am part of the OSAB in Louisville. I've been on the board for almost 2 years, so I'm still learning a lot of how things work. I've been a Louisville resident for almost 30 years as well, but I didn't defect to the other side. I'd say that my interests or my skills are just, doing the ranking of open space parcels and land acquisition, and then trails and trail management.
Hey everyone, I'm Ember Bricknell. I'm the Open Space Superintendent for the City of Louisville and staff liaison to the board. Thanks for having us.
Hi, I'm Graham Patterson. I've been on the board almost a year at Louisville Board. I also was on the board in around 2015 to 17 as well, so I'm a returnee. I have a background in conservation management and biology, but I'm semi-retired now.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm an interpreter. I don't matter. And this is my team, Savannah. She's also an interpreter. She matters more than me. And this is Machiko Christensen. I am on the Louisville Open Space Advisory Board. I've been there for about 3 years. I've lived in the city of Louisville for over 30 years. I am interested in land acquisition, ADA, accessibility rights, and so forth for board and commission members. Ecological diversity, open space, supporting open space projects and so forth for recreation purposes, but also for habitat purposes. All right, and next.
I'm Gordon Sims. I've been on OSAC for 4 minutes. I'm brand new. I've lived in Superior since 93, early 93, so long time. So I'm just starting to explore as to where I can do the most good and participate. So nice to meet you all.
And then behind us,
Stephanie Miller. I'm a 20-plus year resident, 3 years on town council. Previously was the primary liaison for OSAC for Superior, and now I'm the backing up for Mike.
And I'm Leslie Clark. I'm the Parks Recreation Open Space Director and serving as the staff liaison tonight.
okay, and then we do have a member online Tracy, are you available to chime in?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My video looks to be hung, but that's okay. You can hear me. I am a almost 30-year resident of Superior, been on OSAC for about 4 years, and I run our wildlife monitoring program, and I'm very involved in the wildlife encouragement team as well.
And then not with us today is Amber Graves. Unfortunately, she was not able to make it, but she is our lead for prairie dog relocation issues. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later on in the agenda this evening, but just so you know. And again, I'm Kara Noisy. I've been on the team since 2020, and my current focus area is transitioning to our volunteer raptor monitoring program. Okay, so everyone has had the chance to look at the agenda. I want you all to know that while we have this, we understand that conversation could pull us different ways. And more than anything, we just want this to be a welcoming opportunity for sharing ideas, leveraging skill sets, so that we can build upon this. So if we don't get to everything, I think that's okay, all right? This is just the first step in the process. I'm also aware that we might see the Aurora Borealis tonight, and so that might be on your minds as well as getting, and then also I would say joining us this evening are a couple of classes from high school, government classes. We welcome you as well, so thank you for being here. Are there any changes that we need to amend for our shared agenda? Okay, well, let's go on ahead and move forward to the public comment section. This is an opportunity that we have where people can either be present or online opportunities to provide ideas, not for discussion. Unfortunately, it's not a discussion session, but a time to propose topics that could be on a future agenda. We welcome those dialogues from residents. The only thing is they're limited to a 5-minute comment. I'm curious if there is anyone in the room this evening that has public comment. We do have one. Yes, if you could please let us know your name and where you're from, and we'd love to hear what your ideas are.
Yeah, I'm Dan. I live in Superior. I own a house on Coyote Ridge, right on the open space. Met Kara at a Superior event a couple months ago and have chatted with her tonight a little bit about Coyote Ridge. And I know I only got 5 minutes for this, so maybe some topics for future agenda would be some suggestions for managing Coyote Ridge. And I also said this forward in an email. But one thing I noticed, both living out there and looking through the master plan, I don't think there's any sort of yearly maintenance plan associated with Coyote Ridge. I know there's been some ad hoc maintenance. My wife and I have done a little bit of maintenance, but there's some ongoing erosion issues and then also just some recurring vegetation management issues. And then also same thing with the master plan. Looks like there were some improvements that were being suggested, but I didn't see anything related to maintenance and ongoing budget to follow up on those improvements if those were happening. And I promise that's 2 of 4 things, so I think I'll be in 5 minutes. But I think there's some opportunities to engage the community in some maintenance events. So I know there's something with the open space ranger already doing that. I don't know if there's more opportunities going forward, but I think that's something we could work on. And then last comment on the master plan is, it doesn't seem right now that there's a process for adding or modifying trails. And I noticed that quite a few existing trails were not included in the initial map sent out to the town for the survey. So I also suggest that we look at including those in the master plan as well. That's a lot of stuff.
And your comments are all related to just Coyote Ridge, is that correct?
Specifically Coyote Ridge, yes.
Okay.
You know,
I just
5
wanted to be
minutes.
sure I understood. Thank you.
You know, I think, yeah.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for being here. Is there anyone else in the room that has public comment this evening? What about online? All right, well, let's go on ahead and move to the next topic, and that is our OSAC discussion items, beginning with town council liaison updates. Leslie, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I have just a few updates. The Coyote Ridge Trailhead and parking lot area, that contract has been awarded. They are waiting on notice to proceed from CDOT. This is a project that does impact CDOT and requires their permissions. So we're looking at that project hopefully starting next week once they get all of the notice to proceed approvals. That will include about a quarter-mile trail that is designed to be ADA accessible. It is natural surface crusher fine. And then there'll be a small parking lot, 12 spots, with 2 ADA spots included in those. So that's an exciting project that'll get kicked off here soon. We are
I would just say for our guests, I want to make sure that you all are familiar with Coyote Ridge and the location. It's essentially McCaslin and 128.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
As you can go.
And the parking lot is going to be basically right next to the pile of millings that CDOT has stored up there, so we're right next door to that. The other items for update, we have a contractor hired through our FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program to do some wildfire mitigation throughout town. This is a 3-year endeavor funded in part through this grant process. The contractor is Olson Lawn Care, and they will be conducting some removal of hazardous trees and branches, some brush removal, and they will be doing some mowing along Rock Creek in Community Park area. We've walked through there with them in detail. They are very much aware of the concern about habitat protection, and they are aware of all the nesting sites. So they're going to be very careful and only take what they need to take for wildfire mitigation reasons. Many of you have noticed the goats are grazing up in the Castle Peaks open space area. They are moving from the south to the north through that open space, and they plan to have a community meet and greet on the 22nd. That's a Saturday from 11 to 2. The idea is that their grazing will have moved them all the way down to the area right across from Wildflower Park, so folks can park at Wildflower Park or walk if you're close by or ride your bike, and come and learn about the goats, interact with the goats, feed the goats, take your picture with the goat, all those fun things. There's also a volunteer project on the same day. We are going to be installing a prairie dog fence along one of our open spaces directly south of the Coal Creek neighborhood, so Coal Creek Crossing neighborhood. There is a colony there of prairie dogs that is migrating, and they're not too close to the homes yet, but we want to make sure they kind of keep their distance. So that's what that project is all about. That's going to be on November 22nd from 9 to noon. There is a sign up on our volunteer page on the website. And those are all my updates.
Leslie, when is the open house for the goat?
Leslie, do you want to talk about the raptor nests?
How about you talk about the raptor nests?
A group of volunteers has built 3 different raptor nests, and the town is working with the volunteers to put these raptor nests up in various trees, mostly dead cottonwood areas. One is near Town 15. One potentially will be over in Autry Park, and then they're also updating the nest that's near Heartstrong. So that's really nice progress to see to support all of the raptors in town. So thank you, Leslie.
No, thank you, Tracy. That was great information. So it is kind of an interesting project, building those nests through volunteer efforts. And then we do have one of our vendors who's helping us install them in the trees. And to go back to your question, the goats, you were interested in the time, they're going to be from 11 to 2 on the 22nd.
And Mark, I think you had a question as well
I was
about
just
Coyote
to
Ridge.
clarify the Coyote Run, Coyote Ridge?
Yes.
Yours is Coyote Run.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's why I got it mixed up. But is it at the top of the Morgul Bismarck, at the top? So where's the trailhead going to be? Just curious. Is it going to be on 128?
So it's off of 128 on the north side of 128, and it's east of McCaslin intersection.
Cool, got it, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about any of the town updates or about our goats or about any of that we're doing? And please, if you have questions about the town of Superior business, please let us know.
I have one question about your goats. Have you had any citizens who have been opposed to the goat grazing?
I'm not aware of any, but have you encountered that, Leslie?
I would say people are 99% in support of the goats. When we first started goat grazing, there was some, questions and concern. It was unfamiliar. Now that it's become a somewhat more consistent practice here in town, folks are very comfortable with the goats. They are comfortable with our vendor. They see that the goats are cared for well. There was some concern when we had really cold days that they were suffering from the cold, and we did some educational pieces about the type of goats, the type of coat they have, how that protects them in the wintertime, and then we do some shelter projects for them as well if it gets really windy. So
I think it really helps too that we have these community engagement opportunities. It really does bring out people with questions and ideas. Goodness, I'm thinking back to when we had our National Trails Day in the summer. There were goats being born at the event. It was just really interesting. Leslie, would you mind taking just a moment to explain the grant process?
certainly. We have been fortunate to receive grant funding to help support our goat grazing as part of wildfire mitigation. Traditionally, we've had support from Boulder County through their Strategic Fuels Mitigation Grant Program. They've funded us several years for goat grazing cycles. The town also provides a match to that to help fund the full project. This year, we have received additional funding through FEMA, through their hazard mitigation program, again, for wildfire mitigation. And this is allowing us to graze pretty much year-round. We do have some breaks in the year. The goats do visit other communities occasionally, and they also have to go back home for veterinary services and to make sure that they produce the next round of goats. So they go home for that, and then they come back. But we are grazing in excess of 200 days a year.
Leslie, we have a grant proposal or a RFP proposal in the works for a trail management plan for Coyote Ridge. Could you tell us where we're at for that? Because it's relevant to Dan's comments?
It's a great question. So this is the non-motorized grant program through Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We've put in what they call the pre-application and received notice to put in a full application. So there's some follow-up documents that we are pulling together. One of those is environmental assessment that's still in process. But once those are submitted, they then do presentations in January, and I think the award is like in June, so it's a quite lengthy process for that. But that would fund basically a trail plan. So putting together the plan, not necessarily doing the work on the trails, but developing potentially names for the trails, mapping for the trails, and then prioritizing work that needs to be done out there on the trails to improve them.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. All right, let's move on to the next topic, and that is trail counters. It's something that we've been kicking around here in Superior about getting an idea of usage. To either of you, do you have any updates on counters?
I don't have any, Todd. I know you kind of weighed in on.
No, I think I copied members of the committee. I did provide some feedback to Leslie and Hari, our ranger.
Yes,
was a present.
yes, we do have a presenter online, one of the vendors, and he's available to talk about the type of trail counters, and that is, and I'm gonna really butcher your name, sorry, Quentin LeBorn.
It's perfect. You said it perfectly. Can I share my screen or can I?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Is there any chance we can have that on the screen?
It says host is not allowing to share for this webinar.
Maybe not.
Sharing is not turned on.
I think we can get the presentation on the monitors, but probably not on the projected screen.
Okay.
Okay, how do you want to proceed? I'm not sure how to do this then.
I'm going to make you a co-host, and that should help out.
Okay, okay. Okay, great, thank you. All right, let me know if you see my screen.
Yes.
Do you?
I can.
Okay. I'm not sure if the rest of the room can see it.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So, EcoCounter, I don't know if you ever heard of us. We are the leader data provider and counting devices provider. So we supply many different solutions to count either pedestrians, we can count cyclists, and both differentiate between two. We have sensors, the software to analyze the data, and we also provide maintenance and technical assistance if needed. I changed some logos here to make it more relevant for you. So we work with a lot of people around you. I was actually in your area a few weeks ago. So as you can see, Fort Collins, Greeley, Alberta, we do a lot of work with CDOT. And so they have a variety of different counters across Colorado. Our counters are, well, we can start with why collecting data. If I'm talking today, you probably know why you should collect data. So you can have more funding because you can apply for grants with the data, but also you can optimize planning, manage the trails more efficiently, and you can also understand the weather impacts. So our range of counters, most of our counters are battery powered. We can transmit the data automatically with 4G. We have a range of detection that can go from 4 feet to more than 40 feet. You can also connect to the counter with Bluetooth, remote update, so there is no cables, everything is wireless. That allows you to capture 24/7 data, and we can classify users as well. So scooters, pedestrians, cyclists, we can also detect the speed, direction of travel, and the data is available as low as 15-minute interval. But the basic option is hourly interval. This is like 4 of our different options. I've been talking with Perry, and that's what we discussed. So I'm going to talk about the Power Nano, and also the Multi. The Power Nano is our smallest counter. It's battery powered. It will detect pedestrians, cyclists without distinction, direction of travel, of course, and to retrieve the data on this counter, it has to be done manually with Bluetooth and a phone, either Android or iOS. The Pyro Evo is pretty much the same thing as the Nano, but you have more options like detection range, so you can go as far as 40 feet, and the data is transmitted twice a day with automatic data transmission. So for locations that are pretty far away, it's interesting to have that enabled, and so you don't have to manually go retrieve the data. It's time saving in the end. It comes in different housing, just FYI. It can be a box that you can move around, but also posts that can be wooden posts or recycled plastic ones. And finally, the Multi-Evo. So it's a more advanced system that can detect pedestrians, cyclists, distinguish between the two. With this one, we can also detect scooters and speed. So a lot of different settings and a lot of data that can come from this scanner. We also have an option to have it solar, so pretty much power sufficient with the battery. If you have a post nearby, we can install a solar panel. And this is one of the output of the data. So with the Pyro, you would get a total number. Here we don't have the ins and the outs, but here you would get a total number of visitor. With the Multi, you would get total of pedestrians, total of cyclists, and total of scooters. It's the same data, but displays differently. I know I don't have much time, so I'm just going to go quick on the different platforms that we give you access once you have our counters. So Ecovisio is where you analyze your data. EcoLink Evo is on your phone. It's available on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. And Visitor Flow is a newer offer that we launched with GPS trace data. Finally, I'm just going to show you what it looks like on Ecovisio. So you have your different counters. Here we're in Montreal with the parks of Mont Royal. If you come to Montreal, there's a lot of systems here, and you can manage your different counters, see which ones are where and do what, see the battery life as well. And then you can make pie charts and different diagrams and histograms to see what's the repartition of the different sensors. You can see frequency over the course of the year. So it's a few examples, but you can really play with the platform, and you can have dashboards per system and per location. So it's a very powerful tool that we help our client to set up together. Not everyone has the same needs, so all the dashboards are fully customizable. That's that's also something you can get with multiple years of data. When you will see the monthly pet counts all for the years. And finally, there is also the weather data that is included in Ecovisio. So it helps you understand why there is a sudden increase of usage, or like how the weather can impact your attendance and visitation. Sometimes we think that maybe a snowstorm can stop people from biking, but for example, not in Montreal. Maybe in Colorado, I'm not sure. So that's an extra layer of information available on Ecovisio. Finally, we have a support team. So as you probably understood, we're located in Montreal, and we are available for any questions our clients might have. We have clients from Alaska to Florida, so we're available for you to help with your data collection. I think that's pretty much it. I didn't want to take too much of your time. Let me know if you have any questions.
That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. It's incredible
You're welcome.
to see what kind of options are out there as we look to determine what kind of traffic we're getting on our trails, and specifically by who, pedestrians, bikes, what kind of bikes. I'm always going to point to the two of you because you're our trail experts.
Well, I was just going to add, I mean, part of the reason we're looking at the counters is for Coyote Ridge and understanding how it gets used, and people are using it, what types of usage. And it's a pretty sprawling property. It's 292 acres, which is pretty big. So the counters, I think, be particularly useful, as I mentioned, is understanding traffic for things like grants and development, and informing how the trails get developed by whoever we end up
Really
going
would
with.
become the priority for those projects, right?
Right, and we really don't have good visibility into user visits right now at all. So it's kind of a gap. So we're eager to get that going, and I know Todd and I worked to put together a draft RFQ or RFP a little while ago. So we kind of know what we want to do, I think, as a town, because of the surveys that we did of what the community would like to see. So I think the next step would be to contact the right kind of vendors and organizations that can help us with planning and potentially the construction of trails, improvement of trails, signage, things of that nature that came up in the survey. So that's my piece. I don't know, Todd, if you had anything that you wanted to add on.
I have a question, if you don't mind, if I can. I'm just curious about like how weather impacts. Like, do people still like snowshoe, or are there recreational activities that you still notice, and are you looking for that data in, say, Coyote Ridge, because it's such a large property?
Yes, I've heard people actually skiing on it when it gets snow in the wintertime. And again, like most of the information we have now is pretty anecdotal. We see hikers out there, we see bikers out there, we see people walking dogs, we see Jan out there. So it's fairly well used, but we need to move beyond anecdotal data, I think, to have real data, and the counters will help us with that. So it does get used all year round. In fact, some of the signal track is so narrow that when the grass is high, it's a little harder to see the trail. So in the wintertime, it's actually can be easier to navigate in some ways. So yeah, it's year round.
We did author a Coyote Ridge master plan. It's been, about a year and a half?
Couple years, yeah.
Since then, and it would require certainly more community engagement before we started actually building upon it and building trails and whatnot. But just brainstorming in our committee, we thought that, there are social trails, there are distinct trails already. We're already seeing all kinds of traffic, but it's very important for us to have safe trails. And we know that some of them are not. They're just social trails. It's very important for us to have that ADA ability in places where it's possible. So we envisioned that in the master plan. Ideally, though, this traffic counter, the trail counters, will allow us to determine how we tackle that plan. And again, it's a plan, and it would require more community engagement before we implemented more, but it's a good starting point.
But Quentin, could you also provide us with I don't know if it could all fit on one page, but you had, is it 3 or 4 different counters you were explaining to us tonight? So
Yes.
Okay, so if you could put each of those in and tell on a summarized version, let us know what the feature differences are between them, and then a price that is associated with the initial and with the ongoing cost for those.
I think we have that.
Oh yeah, I think I provided that with to Perry. I can send that to Leslie as well. No problem with that. So from the 3 I presented to you, the first one, the Nano, is let's say the most basic one, because you have to retrieve the data manually. The next one, the Paro Evo, will transmit the data and is a little bit more agile, because you can select the range of detection. And you have more housing options. And finally, the Multi-Evo is probably the most advanced one, because you can see differentiation. So depending on where you want to install it, it's not one size fits all. It's really like where you want to put it and what you want to detect at that location. You don't need to have multis everywhere. I always recommend to maybe have one main entrance with the repartition of how many cyclists, how many pedestrians, and you can have more mobile counters across the trails to put that repartition on other counters, you see. So yeah, you don't need to have 20 counters, all multis everywhere on the trails. Mobile counters for 6-month data collection sometimes can help.
A question related to the quote that you provided us.
Yeah.
There's a 2-year subscription for roughly $1,000. Is it $1,000 per counter, or is it $1,000 one subscription covers all our counters?
So the 2 years subscription was because the Nanos comes with 2 years of the subscription for the platform, and so all the counters they added 2 years. For the counters that transmit the data, it's like you have a SIM card inside the system. It's like you have a phone. You need a phone plan, because the sensor will use the cell tower to send the data. So it's the transmission of the data, but it's also hosting your data and the whole software that we provide. So it's per system. The subscription is always per system, and it depends on the features that you have.
I'm sorry if I didn't understand you. I couldn't hear the answer to my question.
Okay, sorry.
Is it?
So the 1,000 the subscription is per device. So it's $540. If it's the professional license, it's $540 per device that transmit the data automatically. If it's a device that doesn't transmit the data automatically and it's on the light subscription, that would be $180 per year. So it really depends on the tier of the subscription you have.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
I think so.
One additional question for you. Are you using this data to evaluate e-bike usage as well?
That's certainly part of it, because we did 2 surveys that were pretty exhaustive, and e-bikes came up among other things. People do want to know that, and the town's done a lot of outreach about helping people understand the different types of e-bikes, because there's some confusion about that. But it's in the master plan. I think there's some mention of it in surveys. It's probably not a big highlight of that master plan. And that document is actually on our town website too. So if anybody's interested in looking at it, I know I sent Dan a copy or a link to it before. It's pretty comprehensive. I mean, they did a really nice job, taking all the feedback kind of highlighting where the big topics came out of that survey. And there was 2 different surveys that we did over time. So.
Can Louisville explain how they use counter and counter data?
A little bit. Yeah, we in Louisville were pretty interested also in the human dimensions studies of who's using our trails, how they're being used. We opted to buy 4 trail cameras in-house. So we have 2 that are infrared. We have 2 that can distinguish between bikes and runners, and 2 that are more simple models that just simply take a tally of users. So when we set it up initially, we're just starting to play around with this. So we're learning our way through this equipment and how to navigate it. But we started at Davidson Mesa with our largest property and put trail cameras at all major entrance points. So we wanted to see all use coming in. 2 of our cameras are directional, so we can tell if there are people going in and out or just in. So, you have to take it with a little grain of salt. But we set our trail cameras up at Davidson Mesa for a full year to get a full data set. And now we're rotating to different properties for several months at a time, and then trying to kind of extrapolate what that would mean for a year once we figure out seasonal trends. So right now, similar to all of you, it sounds like we're really interested in using it for grant funding, for use, for operational funding to see which properties have the most use. We also use them to target our operational work. So similar to this gentleman was just explaining, we can see peaks in use on a graph. So we can start to see use trends. So we can plan maintenance or during low use times when we know the parking lot is less busy and the users are lower in number. So that's how we're using it in the operational work versus the grant funding and money. And we're still working with we're doing it in-house. We have not hired a contractor to do this yet. But there's another organization called Placer AI who's always eager to work with us, and they take trail data and mix it with, what is the app that people use when they run?
Strava.
Thank you. So they overlay that data with Strava to start to look at high use areas. So then you have your numbers overlaid with the Strava data to show high, low, medium use, to start to see patterns of use on our property. So those are some of the ways we're using them. We're also using them on social trails. So if we have restored a social trail and closed it officially, we'll put those up sometimes just to see are people actually obeying the signs, or are they still using the trail? So those are some of the ways we're using them currently, but we're still investigating other ways to kind of enhance that data set.
Any other questions or input? Thank you so much for the presentation. That really was phenomenal. Thank you for your time this evening.
Sure, thank you. Last thing maybe I can add is that with all the municipalities we're working with around you, it is possible through Ecovisio to share data between users and between our clients. So if you're sharing a trail with Boulder, for example, or I don't know, or Vada or whatever, if you have authorization from Boulder or other cities, we could share sites. So we do that a lot with CDOT, with Denver, Fort Collins, and CSU, for example, that they're sharing sites and count data. So that gives you a more comprehensive view of what's happening along the trail, not just your part. So that's one extra feature that is completely free if you have the authorization from Boulder, for example. As long as I have authorization from both parties, I can share sites and share data. So yeah, could be useful.
Thank you, Quentin.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great. Next up is our topic about mangy coyotes. So it's something that we're certainly observing here in the town of Superior, just some unhealthy coyotes, unfortunately, and it becomes a really critical as we come into these colder months, especially. We're going to have some photos go around of some of the folks that we're seeing. We have some cameras that are able to capture them around the town, and I'm sure it's something that you're seeing as well in Louisville. Online, we have Tracy. Tracy, you're going to share with us one idea of potentially tackling this issue.
Indeed. Thanks. Before we get into that, I just want to share one other camera-related, wildlife-related thing really quickly for our team. We did move one of our cameras, the one that was down along Rock Creek. We moved it to Town 15, brand new there. So we'll see what kind of data we get from that. But during that, looking for a site, et cetera, I have to say we noticed a ton of elk and deer scat on that property. So something to keep in mind, we know that there's a lot of animals out there. We'll see what we get from the camera positioning and where it's aiming right now is sort of animals coming across Town 15 and down towards the creek. So just with that, let's talk about mangy coyotes. I know there's a picture being passed around. We have at least 2 mangy coyotes in town. They're both believed to be juveniles. This is an ongoing problem, obviously. It's not a new thing. We see them every year. We had one last year that we are pretty sure died of mange. Well, she didn't die of mange, but she died of cold or some other illness that was brought on from the inability to cope with the mange. Research shows that multiple sources, from multiple sources will show that mange changes normal coyote behavior, and it causes more coyote and human and pet interactions. So treating the mangy coyotes would potentially help protect our community's pets. We know for sure of one dog that lives near Bowes Pond that has contracted mange twice. There are likely others that we don't know about. It's also possible, though rare, that a resident could contract mange. In addition, it's also very distressing for people to see these coyotes with mange. It's a really unpleasant way for a coyote to die. Exposure to cold, starvation, organ failure, blindness, loss of hearing, etc. And as we all learned through our rodenticide program, which is actually on our agenda later, there's a strong link between human actions and the incidence of mange in our wildlife. So treating the affected animals would be a small step towards rectifying the results of human actions. Treatment these days has improved remarkably. So it involves giving the affected animal one chewable dose of a new drug called Bravecto. Previous treatments required multiple doses and they were very difficult to administer in the wild, but Bravecto's one-dose regimen greatly simplifies the process. And it's not a super scary drug. It's much simpler to obtain. So I wanted to ask the question of whether or not the town has any willingness to participate or sanction a pilot program to treat the affected coyotes. In the past, Ashley Delop, our wildlife ecologist, didn't have had the sense that it was going to be difficult to do. But my understanding is that she has come around and decided that this is actually, something that we could tackle, though I have not spoken to her personally. So I want to make sure that's clear. And so while we could treat the coyotes that are currently sick, I would love also even to think about being proactive about treating coyotes, because this drug Bravecto is the same drug that a vet will prescribe to treat fleas and ticks in household pets. So, that tells you the class of drug we're dealing with. It's nothing really scary. So anyway, I would love to know if the town has some willingness to participate. And if so, I'd be happy to pull together a more detailed discussion with the right people to talk about how we might go about it.
Thank you, Tracy. I think that is, a great topic for discussion. I think that it would be something new for the town, and we would want to work closely with Colorado Park and Wildlife and the Boulder County Animal Control as well to make sure we're in partnership with them. But I think it's definitely a proposal we could put forth to our town council.
Okay. Well, how about I touch base with you and we'll figure out what next steps would actually look like. But I think it would be great to move this forward. It's obviously something that with winter coming, it would be ideal to get ahead of it. I mean, with these sick coyotes or the ones that are already ill, it takes about 12 weeks. So each dose of this Bravecto is effective for about 12 weeks. So it'd be nice to get some of this going more quickly than not. But anyway, let's chat and see what next steps would make sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy, one quick question. Do you know what the cost is for each of those? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think roughly $60 or $70 a dose. And I would have to do a little more research to verify that, but that's my understanding.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll stand by for the engagement that will happen. I think what is key is making sure that we're able to approach town council before it gets any colder. And yeah, we can come with cost or whatever else you think the proposal needs.
We've got a work session, I think I know our meeting, I think, is on the 8th, and we've got a work session on the 3rd, and then we're done meeting for the year. So you might want to get on the calendar sooner rather than later, so it doesn't go into January, obviously, when it gets pretty cold.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy, for that input. I'm curious before we move on, if there's anyone in the room that has questions or input on that topic.
I'm curious, how is the drug administered? I mean, do you have to capture the coyotes, or do you shoot, you dart them, or how is it administered?
Yeah, excellent question. We would have to work out exact procedures, but in general, we would put a camera where we are seeing them. We need to make sure we're treating the right animal. Though, again, it's actually not dangerous if another animal gets it. That's the good news. And like I said, it's just a tea and flea and tick preventative. But we would use a camera, identify where they were coming on a regular basis. And once we knew that, we would put the pill in some sort of food or something to attract them. And then capture on film, or on the camera, that they are in fact the one that got the medicine.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just have a comment, and I kind of find myself going back and thinking, is this a conservation issue or an animal welfare issue? It can be both, but is there mortality due to mange significantly impacting the coyote population? And I don't expect an answer, but that would be a question. And, I have my own feelings about animal welfare, but as a conservation group and a group as OSAC are interested in just conserving biodiversity, it is a question, are we really doing a conservation job here because mortality is sufficiently high to impact the population? Or is it just a welfare because we feel uncomfortable and don't like to know that coyotes are suffering and dying because of mange? So that's, in that space, I think there's a question to ask.
Yeah, and I agree. That's a fair question. Obviously, yeah, we could debate that. One of the things that we have taken on is, as an organization, as we have fewer and fewer properties to pursue, trying to do a better job of taking care of our wildlife. Now, what that means exactly is still a valid question, and whether or not we should go to this next level, I think you raised an interesting point. I think one of the reasons I might vote in favor of doing it, in addition to just it's never fun to watch them suffer, is of course there is the potential for it spreading to pets and potentially to people, because mange does change their behavior. And then also we know that there's a link between our human use of rodenticides and their susceptibility to mange. So it is there's a link between a human action and their illness. So, but again, you're right. I mean, I don't know that the coyotes are not threatened in town. So anyway, it's an interesting question.
How contagious is, how contagious is this? And is it transmitted to other animals? And is it?
I couldn't.
If if we're seeing only a couple of these examples a year, it sounds like it's maybe not that contagious, or maybe the population isn't that big in total, I don't know.
And Tracy, the population's not that big anymore, right? Coyote?
I mean, it's not that big. I guess with our wildlife monitoring program, it is the most common animal that we see in town. But I don't know what the total population is. If I had to guess, obviously I'm really just guessing, I would say 30, something like that.
We're whispering here at the table, Tracy, going, some of us thought there would only have been 10. So,
and I don't know, but I mean,
I know, but it's just actually interesting to see the thoughts on the faces of the people in the room.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not really sure, because obviously we're not tracking, but they're not collared or any of those kinds of things. So it's just what areas of town we're seeing them in, and obviously we're not seeing them all on any given day. So I don't know. I mean, it may be as low as 10, it could be as high as 30. But when we have pups in town, we've had pups over at HHR, that alone would be a group of 5 or 6 right there. So yeah, it's an excellent question. Without maybe collaring or something like that, we may never know exactly how many are in town at any given time.
Thank you for that, Tracy.
Sure.
And then also to just share with everyone here, I'm curious, actually, I think you probably have something similar. We have a team that is a group of volunteers that records observations of certain animals. Do you have that as well?
Yeah, we do have a kind of coexisting with Coyote campaign that we kicked off multiple years ago, separate to all of you. We take citizen reports, written reports, and put them into a JS database. And also if we have negative interactions between coyotes and pets, like say that was reported to PD, we collaborate with PD to get that contact information to follow up with the citizen. So we do track incidents with more concern for significant interactions. So sightings we don't track, but contact, interaction, access to backyard, hazing behavior, we track that.
Thanks. Well, let's move on to the next topic, and this is really about our shared agenda for this evening. And as you look at it in front of you, I know it looks like a bunch of documents, right? And just so you know, they're available on our town website. We're not going to go into detail. We'll talk about them briefly in really hopes of learning more about what you have in Louisville. But as we begin, 4A is the Town of Superior PROS, that's the Park and Rec Open Space Trails Master Plan document. That was published in 2021. And it really was a compilation of information of the structure and assets that we have in the Town of Superior. I think the most notable input that we had for that document is in the appendix, Appendix D, where we were talking about a parcel of land that is Town of Superior owned. We call it Town 15. It is right across from the Colton Trailhead at the intersection of McCaslin and Colton. And for the purposes of the appendix document, it was our committee's position that that parcel be left as is. And so that input went through, but there was over 400 people who are households that provided input with the community engagement. And so the results of that document were that either leave it as it is, or if it's going to be anything, maybe it can be park-like. What's key about this is it is town-owned. It is not zoned for open space. Recently it was even voted that right now it's not going to be considered for rezoning for anything like that. So it is at this point in time essentially a dated document when it comes to that appendix. Now certainly the town can always decide to revisit. I just don't think that's going to be something that we'll see soon. And I'll lean over to our trustee. I don't think that will be visited.
No, because we're going through the comprehensive plan right now, and it seems that everybody's in favor of just kind of leaving as is, so not touching it, not developing, kind of seeing what that and other opportunity areas are suggested to be. But I know that there's been concern about it being developed, and that's not on our radar. So for now, it's staying kind of undesignated open space, but technically zone commercial or a community activation center.
But that being said, it's a very interesting document, and it was, again, a lot of collaboration from community residents. I'm curious, do you have something similar in Louisville that has generated community input on how you want to use your spaces?
You want to dive into that, Adam?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everybody.
Adam's got a history.
So I'm Adam Blackmore, the Director of Parks, Rec, and Open Space in Louisville. Thank you for having me. I've never been in this building before, so
welcome.
It's lovely. I was prepped for what I told was a small mini chambers, and so this does not feel like the mini chambers room, but thank you for having me. So we do have the link to the 2012 plan in here that was citywide. We also have that isn't linked in here, a open space master plan that is overdue for an update from 2004. We are currently in the process of updating our department master plan. We call it a long-range plan that should be adopted next year. We're about 3 to 4 months into the engagement process for that. There's a heavy lean on open space issues and giving more attention potentially to open space, land classifications, use, desires for the future than the 2012 plan. And at the same time, in concert, we're doing our first ever standalone trails master plan, which is called out in the charter as something that our Open Space Advisory Board is something they're supposed to weigh in on, and it doesn't exist. And so we're creating that at the same time. And so we've had robust feedback thus far. Over 1,200 surveys have been filled out. 600-ish of those are statistically valid through a mailing process with an individual code. We had over 200 people at an open house 2 weeks ago to provide input, and a strong interest in open space at that as well. So we're kind of right in the thick of it right now for land use and the future of our open spaces.
Another thing I might add to that is complementing this entire process, we're also doing an open space citywide veg survey. So if you've seen our plan in the past, we have our open space land broken down into categories of preserve, protect, visit, or other. And those categories dictate how heavy use can be. So it starts to look at the issues of recreation versus preservation. So we just got funding last year to survey all of our properties, to do a veg survey system-wide. And now we're crunching that data and looking at how we want to look at that data to set up the new preserve, protect, visitor categories based on biodiversity, native versus non-native, some of those components. So that's really going to feed into the plans and shape the plans Adam was discussing, and that's been really important to our community to really get that ecological foundation embedded into the plan. So that's a nice.
And all of those plans that you have, will they then be incorporated into this overall comprehensive plan? Because that's what our trustee Stephanie Miller was talking about.
I think that's a great question. I'll take a stab and then let Adam rescue me. But our PROST is very high level umbrella policy. So that's looking at parks, rec, open space, golf, trails. So we'll give more of a visionary statement for the future. And then our hope is in future years we have funding to dial into more specific open space management plans that would be more similar to kind of our past plan, which is really goal specific by property. So it might speak directly to, we want trail access here, preservation here, fishing pond here. So more site specific management versus overriding policy.
Ember never needs rescue.
Sometimes it did. My voice has been dying this week, so.
To the trustee's point, we are actually going through the comprehensive plan simultaneously right now. So Louisville has a litany of feedback opportunities. We tried to align our department planning efforts on the back end of the comprehensive plan with our timing, and then the comprehensive plan ended up needing some further revisions and community engagement once we've already gotten into ours. So they're actually happening in relative concert. We anticipate the comprehensive plan being adopted in March of next year. Our plan is more November to December, so we're really trying hard to the point, track what's happening with the comp plan so that we're not contradicting a priority or a goal for our city council or for the community, while also being able to move forward some of our overdue planning efforts. So.
Well, it sounds like we're on a similar timeline,
very similar.
Because our planning commission is, well, they're updating a document that is dated from 2012.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's time, and you know, we have various plans that we have participated in with this committee, but they've really been in isolation. So this is a great way for ideas to fold into this. And I know that the planning commission is, they're working the details now. I think it might make the end of the year, if not early 2026. So it sounds like we're very similar. And I really think it's interesting too how we have similar engagement strategies, whether it's the surveys or in person as well. That's fantastic.
But you know, I would really like to dial in. Your question was related to, do we have any specific property public input? I don't think we really do have any that is focused on a particular property. And I find that really interesting that you were able to accomplish that. Did you send a survey to all the neighbors who were local to that particular parcel? Or
so when it comes to it, actually twofold, right? So this committee has its own annual document that we do on our own, just to look at potential opportunities to fold into open space. So that's one. The Planning Commission actually is looking at it separate, even to input from us, and looking at target opportunities, both town-owned and those that are private property. And we've had various community events at our community center. We've had surveys, and so I hope that's answering your question. But yes, residents are providing input for if these parcels of land were to become available, and if they were, you know, if rezoning is even a potential for anything, what would you like to see these areas become? And so it's as simple in some cases as a graphic of a map of the town and circled with the target opportunities, parcels opportunities, with people putting sticky notes on what they would like to see there. Maybe it's housing, maybe it's affordable housing, maybe it's a rec center, aquatic center, I mean, you name it, open space in some cases, right? But I've lost track of how many engagements we've had. We're having one visit tonight. It might be tonight, or it was yesterday or tomorrow. I don't know. But
we also did.
Yes.
That's an example of what Susan was specifically asking about. One parcel, when we went through that 2 years ago.
It was about 2 years ago where we reached out again through surveys as well as community events, 4th of July, National Trails Day, again with the maps of this is Coyote Ridge. And as our team was saying earlier, it's a large parcel of land. It already has a lot of use. And so with that came concerns too of you're not going to take away trails, right? Or, you know, I love this hill. You're not going to, I mean, is there any way we can keep it? To great ideas of wouldn't it be fantastic if we had trails labeled as if it was a ski resort. Some are green, some are blue, some are double diamond, right? All of that came from community engagement. And like you said, Rita, it's been folded into our Coyote Ridge. So that one parcel specific open space plan. And granted, it doesn't give us the green flag to move forward and ask town council to develop it. But it does give us the the foundation to move forward. And I think that's where the trail counters and all of that would come forward.
And it's how we got the parking lot that is being built there, that Leslie had explained in staff comments, that the parking lot is being put there. That all came out of the Coyote Ridge consultant that we hired and the master plan that they developed for that particular parcel. And it's also been why Jeff and Mike have gotten into the whole evaluating what the trails are that are there. It all came from that one master plan on that one parcel. It is our largest.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Do you do something similar in Louisville?
So I think it depends on how you're looking at the stages. So I think the process we're doing right now has a lot of that community input. But if you're looking at a property by property management plan, the last time we completed it was 2004. So in 2004, the board and the public wrote basically a management plan by property highlighting goals for future use. So more to the site-specific details of, do you want trails, do you want preservation? So after this plan, once we finish the PROST, then we'll go back into that process again of updating those property-specific plans, most likely. That will be one of the discussions that comes from this long-range master plan process.
And for our Coyote Ridge plan, as well as the other parcels that are open space, so town-owned open space, it's open space in perpetuity, right? And so all of these parcels, now I haven't seen even a draft of where the Planning Commission is, but I would guess that there will be a link somewhere in there to our Coyote Ridge open space plan, and as well as other open spaces, right? Is that what you're thinking, Leslie? We'll have a link.
There will at least be a mention in the appendix or a link in the appendix. And then to answer your other question, I think Rita, you had the survey for the comprehensive plan is open until next Tuesday. So that is still open and available for comment.
But you don't work directly with the Planning Commission. They're sort of parallel efforts.
They're completely separate, but I think it is fantastic, the level of engagement that we do have with them or can have with them. We've had representatives from the Planning Commission come to our OSAC meetings, and especially when we're wanting, and separately, Rita and I have had meetings to talk about the future, making sure definitions are considered, and because terminology, definitions matter, right? And unfortunately, we don't all think the same thing when you say open space or manicured park space, or, so we've had that level of engagement exists, but indeed, our efforts are completely separate. And ultimately, it's the Planning Commission that is doing this document on behalf of our entire town, and will then present it to town council. But we've been very fortunate, we've been able to plug in, where possible, input that matters to our committee that we want to, go forward as recommendations.
Can I ask you a follow-up? I'm Andy Swartz, I'm a member of the Louisville OSAC. Apologies for being a little bit late, but so I'm curious, you talked about the property on Colton. Are there other properties that are sort of, as the comprehensive plan unwinds, you might have an interest in being more open space, and there would be some questions about whether the comp plan goes in that direction or not, or are there any properties significant left that you're considering?
Well, so we do, and so it's listed on here. It is our open space summary report and recommendations. I wanted to make sure I got the official. We know what it is, but we usually just call it the property document. There are various other properties that we're looking at, but keep in mind, again, Town 15, the property on Colton and McCaskill, and that's already town owned.
Yeah, right.
So private property, there's another large one off of 88, the Zaharias property. And I just caution everyone, and I know that you realize this too, the sensitivities that are involved when you're talking about property that is not yours.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we do this with respect to that, but again, with the lens of if property was to come available, right? It's a big if. But I would say Zaharias would be the next really large property, and truly important from open space and wildlife habitat perspective because of the reservoir that is there.
I guess my question was sort of about, as you go through a comprehensive planning process, you could have a comprehensive plan that says, hey, the town of Superior really targets this for multifamily residential development, which would be in direct opposition to what you're hoping for. And how does that process engage you, I guess?
Well, no, which is fine. I think that's the beauty of how our town works, right? We're just a committee of volunteers, right? And we'll talk about issues in terms of how we see the importance for open space and for wildlife. And we present those ideas to our town council and to our town staff, and quite frankly, to the planning commission as well. And they listen to it, they take it in. That doesn't mean that the town council will necessarily vote that way, but I don't. But we realize that, you know, our town council is looking at a strategic scope of what is going on for the greater good of the whole town. And so I think it's a beautiful process. And so, I mean, with that, I mean, it's working. It is working, and it generates a lot of community engagement. Every time we come up with something that could be considered contentious, that just gives us more to consider.
And I'd say there are two things that we do. One that you already talked about, where we do the annual, there are 6 parcels that are potentially things that could become open space here in town. And we OSAC as a committee evaluates those annually and rank them. And it's a somewhat subjective process, as we've acknowledged ourselves. But, you know, that's one piece of what we do. And the other thing that we have done is when there are parcels of more size, Zaharias and Town 15 being ones, we've actually developed position papers on those 2 parcels. And that's on the town's website and the OSAC page as well. So those are 2 things that we've done.
Okay.
And usually those, like the Town 15, it had been done previously, and we updated it recently when this was all coming about, where they were talking about potentially developing it.
And with the Zaharias, and with specific reference to the reservoir there, we have documents with input from ecologists as well. So all of that provides us with good context to provide to the town council as they're in a position or a potential position to make a decision.
Well, I wanted to just say I was really impressed with your open space summary report. You know, it was so detailed and had so much information in it. And that especially struck me because we're sort of moving in the opposite direction with our reports to City Council, because they're so inundated with so much material that they have to read and take in for every meeting, that they prefer a much more concise overview kind of document. And I was curious if you have had that sort of discussion with your City Council.
Well, we have, and you know, every year, it begins just with our committee. We talk about whether it's still a relevant document. And the reality is parcels don't always come available in the priority that our committee would like to see them. And I would say even 6 years ago, we were looking at a lot more properties. And the Marshall Fire, again, talking about something that's very delicate and sensitive. We lost a lot of homes. Right? And so this committee even really struggled with, do we talk about purchasing for open space in perpetuity? So we did go through that, but with that process, we now have a lot of properties that are open space for our town along Coal Creek. We wouldn't have even imagined that 6 years ago. And the point that I bring up with that is, in getting back to the relevance, you know, when we ask, does town council even really want this? There is still that thought of the input that we're receiving, that they would still like to know what the priority ranking would be. So if something were to come up, you know, where would they want to maybe put their efforts for coming up with funds for a purchase? But I also realize I'm speaking out of turn, because we do have a trustee here Do you still find the document relevant?
I know, and I can't speak for the whole council, but I know for myself and several other council members, documents like that are extremely helpful when we're looking at all the information that we have to review. To Kara's point, we're having to look at not just, OSAC's agenda, which is open space and conservation and wildlife and all the things that we love about Superior, and I'm a huge fan of personally, but we're also looking at what is Parks' agenda and what is ACE's agenda and, all these other committees, and in addition to town finance, and trying to bring that all together for that holistic picture. But documents like that where we hear from our committees, that's our residents and our resident leaders, I know personally really helps me shape my opinion on, and as we're talking about properties, I can say, I remember this from, when we discussed it in OSAC or in that document, and it helps shape that opinion. And as we're talking about shaping, resident feedback, as we're talking about, Town 15 specifically, but really just in a broader context, the survey that's gone out for the opportunity areas that I'd mentioned previously, we had some resident feedback that specifically for Town 15, they felt that some options were left out, and the reason was because it could be in the comments, but it did feel misleading. And so because of that resident feedback, there's now a second survey that's gone out on Shape Superior. So not even just hearing the feedback on the survey results, but also during the surveys, is this what our residents feel accurately depicts what feedback they want to give us. We're shaping those as well as we're going through the comprehensive plan. So all of that feedback, I think, really helps us shape our decisions.
But, getting back to the actual document, every year it comes with a committee drill of, because when you talk about the categories are so subjective.
Yeah.
And we'll debate, do we really want to talk about the acreage? Do we really, is it the water, all of that. And, or especially the questions of whether, how much they're potentially worth. None of us are real estate agents or equipped really to look beyond potential assessments. So we even look, it's very subjective. But with that subjectivity, we do come up with a group consensus of a priority ranking.
Yes, that sounds hauntingly familiar.
Yes. And it's our best guess to provide to our town council. I'm wondering, team, did we miss out any other documents? I think we've actually talked, we didn't talk about the trail document that we update. That's something else that we do have, and quite frankly, about 6 years ago, it was regularly updated, and then for about 5 years it was not. And then we brought it back last year to say there was a lot of work that was done about trails throughout our community, not just Coyote Ridge, but just throughout. And so we brought it back, and we did a similar subjective drill in terms of different categories this year of if we had the resources to make recommendations, which trails maybe could have maintenance, which ones could be created, what are our priorities? So that's something that we have just brought back.
I shared our criteria with.
And I will scan it and email it out to folks tomorrow. We just got it.
Team, am I missing any documents that you're thinking we want to talk about? Or anything that you all would like to share with us that's working particularly well in Louisville? Or maybe what hasn't worked? It'd be nice to know maybe what isn't working so we don't go down that road.
I think it might be for Susan or Andy to kind of speak to, but this topic of property evaluation and process has been a little disjointed over the past few years. And just on Monday evening, OSAB had a pretty robust conversation with our city council about semi-formalizing that process and that evaluation. So I would classify that as something we think is going to start working really well. It's been 3 years of discussion in the making to wrap it into a 90-minute presentation at City Council. But I don't know if you guys kind of want to talk about the progress with that and your thoughts and dreams for how that's going to work
I'll let Susan handle it. I'm happy to chime in.
Okay.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, it's just something exciting. I know you've been working on it for a long time.
I'm really thrilled because this is the first time in 8 years that we've had this kind of exchange with City Council about what do you like, what don't you like about the way we present this material to you? How would you like to see this material presented to you? How should the process work? And we've actually come up with a process document that shows, okay, this is what OSAB does, this is what it presents to the city manager, this is what it presents to City Council. And we've actually, I think a really important step that we've added now is council has given direction to staff to reach out to property owners, and not to make an offer on a property, but just to say, you know, we're interested in this property if you were ever to consider selling it or consider a kind of conservation easement or some other kind of situation for it. So I feel really positive and hopeful about that as a step forward. And just, I think, getting council on board with understanding what OSAB's process is and what value it provides to City Council. You want to say anything else, Andy?
Well, I just say, I mean, I think our map looks somewhat similar to your map, although what we've done is divide parcels up into sort of priority order. And I think we refined it a little bit better this time of really trying to narrow down the high priority parcels. You know, the town had bought a large parcel probably 10 years ago, and then pretty much didn't buy any parcels for a number of years. And the board kept doing this process without a whole lot of feedback. So I think Susan said it was pretty remarkable to get feedback we did. Some members of the board who are no longer on our board, I think, left kind of frustrated that they never really understood where the effort was going. We're also fortunate, maybe fortunate and unfortunate, but when the town passed the open space tax increase, it then created a fund where part of that money is going into an open space acquisition fund. In the past, most of the open space acquisition money had come out of the capital budget, which meant that it was sort of a, you know, just a sort of matter of, well, if the space came up, the town decided whether we had enough money to do it. Now we've got this fund, but the fund's not going to have enough money to really buy any substantial pieces for a while. So it's going to be interesting to see whether City Council sort of says, well, we can't buy anything until the fund is big enough, which we heard a little bit last night, or whether if the right property comes up, we actually still can act on it. And I don't know how that's going to play out over time, because I think, you know, everybody's facing declining sales taxes more as there's less retail. So there's some pressure on the town budget that might not have been there 10 years ago. So I think there's still a big unknown for us in terms of that. One of the things I think that we did that I think probably helped the discussion was we narrowed our list of high priorities. And that seemed to be effective for City Council because we have a lot more potential properties than
Yes.
But one thing I was actually glad that City Council said, yes, we want you to keep listing every potential property. You know, have them in a low priority category, but they did want to see everything that is out there. So I think that's useful too, to just be able to have a complete database.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to add on just one thing I think was helpful for City Council was the criteria, besides the ranking, but the criteria. We had like 5 criteria, and I think we narrowed it down to 3. Like strategy, wildlife, and I forget the third category, which I think was really helpful for them.
Public engagement, public usage.
Yeah, so I think those 3 categories were really helpful for them to understand the ranking and all that.
And I'm curious, how often do you interact with your town council? Or what initiates that involvement?
We don't have, though, I'm not sure if it's regularized now. Is it every year that we're going to have a meeting?
It's been 2 in a row. We're hoping for 3 in a row, so it's becoming a trend.
So once a year that the advisory boards meet with City Council and sort of present their work plan and how it fits into council's work plan. So it's really nice that that seems to be a continuing.
Now, is that each advisory board meets separately with the board?
They meet in groups. There's sort of 3 or 4 advisory boards per meeting with City Council. And how many do we have? We have many.
14.
But I think, when there's a new city manager, and she came to one of our meetings where we were talking about acquisition, and recognized some of the disconnect and helped facilitate getting a kind of a special meeting with city council that was, I think, pretty extraordinary.
And then, so with us, I mean, we have Trustee Miller with us today, sitting in for Trustee Foster. Do you have something similar to that?
Not currently. So we've gone through a couple of iterations. In the past, we used to have a city council liaison who would participate and come to the meetings. In recent years, we haven't, and the city's been talking about how to reestablish more communication between council and boards. So then they reinitiated this once annual.
We do have a city council member who, in the past, was our liaison, and she does still occasionally come to meetings, but there's no formalized process right now.
But if you have 14 advisory boards.
Yeah.
It's a lot for
Difficult,
council
right.
members to get involved with.
I don't know how city council people do it. It's kind of amazing.
I don't
Yeah.
either. The time, oh my goodness, the time. What we have found works for us is, well, one, it's great that we do have the flexibility of having a council liaison. That's fantastic. We also, in our own agenda, we typically have a topic that says, do we as a committee have town issues that we feel need to either maybe it's more robust, get on the calendar to have a presentation during a town council meeting, which is very difficult to do. I mean, again, talk about the time. Or is there something where maybe as a committee, we want a representative to provide public comment? We do that as well. But what is really cool that I think that our committee really enjoys the most is town council tries to chisel off a time for once a year having a dinner, a working dinner. And
Like your annual meeting.
yeah, where we'll tee up just a few topics and we hope we can get through them with that small amount of time.
But it's just council and OSAC. And then they do that with each of the advisory committees, but we don't have 14.
No, it's a completely different dynamic for sure.
Could I ask about Coal Creek Trail?
We were just looking at the whole.
This is a trail that we share custodianship. I don't know whether Lafayette has.
Yes, they do.
Or is it
I was
technically
on
not?
all of them today, yes.
So I noticed that Lafayette posted speed limit signs as a management strategy. Are you guys contemplating any kind of management on your section of Coal Creek that we ought to be thinking about?
Well, we have actually just instituted a speed limit of
Tell them about the
50
radar
miles per
guns.
hour, and those signs have just gone up.
Oh, they have?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Coal Creek signs are, I call them, they're not permanent. We're still gonna work through the design and the location for where to put them, but we do have notice of a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. That was adopted September, is that ordinance.
And you do have signs out there somewhere?
And is there any
It's
contemplation of
I
enforcement?
was there, I was on today.
On Coal Creek Trail?
Yes.
So our
From
rangers
here to
technically
Lafayette.
can't enforce the speed limit. Cannot, but we do have support from our police department, who has said they are willing to increase patrol on trails to enforce as needed. But we are also hoping, and I think the council is aware, it's more of an educational approach to give notification, to be mindful of speed. So we're really trying to work on the behavior of the bicyclist, just being well-behaved and keeping speed low and being courteous in that trail etiquette component. So we also have our rangers do a lot of trail etiquette campaigns where we do booths throughout the city and talk about earbuds and pass on the left and your standard trail etiquette.
Are you thinking of instituting a speed limit on your trails?
Well, we have the state.
Yeah, we have what the state has, but at this point in time, no. I don't.
And you don't have any signage?
We've done some
No.
trail etiquette.
It's been the campaign,
But
right?
that's mostly like what you're mentioning, like the earbuds and how to pass and things like that.
and handing out stickers already.
E-bikes are a big topic now, just
Yeah.
differentiating different classes and what they mean and what the rules are, because they're different.
But that campaign, I would say, I mean, granted, those are early steps that you take before you get to the enforcement piece, but the campaign bit has been very robust. And, you know, really, one of the largest factors is the mayor, who will even chime in various newsletters and social media and just to, you know, at least bring up that level of awareness, but we're not at the enforcement piece yet.
Yeah, I'd say for our education campaign this year, I think we reached just over 530 citizens through education booths. We're also collaborating on the e-bike issues with our vendors in town. So they actually, when they sell an e-bike, they hand out our city information about trail etiquette, rules, courtesies.
Great idea.
And then we are really working with youth, where I'm sure you have similar concerns, but our school-age middle schoolers are doing a lot of e-bike riding on streetways, which is where our police department's really partnering with us to try to do education in the school system. So LMS and some of the VBSD schools are teaching bike etiquette. I know because my daughter just had to go last week. So they're actually having the kids get on bikes, going over road rules, taking them on the road through traffic cones, and that was done through VBSD. So there's a lot of partnerships happening in Louisville right now to address the issue, because it is more than just trails, it's roadways and higher danger
And I would just say,
areas.
I live right across the street from the Coal Creek Trail, the Dutch Creek part of it. And a lot of kids use that trail to get to school on their e-bikes. And I have to say, I haven't mentioned this to you yet, you and Adam yet, but I feel like there's a 15-mile-per-hour sign very close to that trailhead. And I really feel like it's made a difference. You know, so even if there's not really an enforcement aspect yet, I think just having the signage up, I would really recommend you think about doing that, because even if you're not out there enforcing it in any significant way, I think it just kind of sends a message, especially to kids, that, oh yeah, you know, I'm not supposed to be racing down this trail.
That's a great idea.
Can I just say, well, I think we met with Lafayette Open Spaces Board earlier in the year, and we're not making a great deal of progress on working directly with them, but we did suggest a number of areas of collaboration, and one of them was harmonization of trail rules. And the other was a strong focus on Coal Creek, because that, not just us in Lafayette, but you and other jurisdictions has that sort of connection through the creek, and creek itself becomes an important conservation target. You know, looking at the richness of riparian vegetation and the potential damage, you know, trails right up to the water's edge can cause. And I would just say the other things we talked about with Lafayette was looking at adjacent properties and thinking how we could increase our priority for a property that would extend, you know, with them to a larger open space.
Like the main offer open space that is both of you guys now.
And then the only other last thing, you know.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your comment? I couldn't hear
I
it.
said like the Mayhopper open space that is a Lafayette, Louisville joint parcel now.
Yeah, I had the fun of being on the board when that was acquired, and it was a kind of strange process, as Ember will attest to, but, you know, it was a victory. And it was a lot of collaboration with Boulder County and Lafayette that got us
It's a
over the
great
line.
trail connection.
Yeah. And then we did talk with Lafayette about, you know, and this is where you guys come in, you know, how could we make our open spaces efforts more regional, you know, and that's where we thought Coal Creek was a good glue to get a bunch of open spaces boards together. And if we started on that, other things would come out of it. Because we didn't, you know, they have a different relationship with the city than we have, I would suggest. And I also, you know, we're all chasing external grant funds as well. You know, how can we learn from each other on that?
Well, you know, it's actually right next on our agenda item is to talk about Coal Creek and Rock Creek. And you've mentioned something that I think is critical, and that's talking about the riparian and the wildlife and the habitat, and something that we certainly experienced after Marshall Fire was a lot of the dead trees, right, and unsafe limbs. And we learned when we actually brought in those who were going to clean out debris that there was also the removal of a lot of habitat. You know, it's hard to find that balance sometimes, or to even put the right amount of thought power on things, but it's a good lesson learned for us. And that is a focus area that we're working on now, is how do we restore habitat in these areas. And while also thinking that, you know, dead trees, quite frankly, are great habitat for a lot of animals, raptors to even the little moles, right? So that's something that we're working on hand in hand with town staff, has been remarkable about finding funding to help us look at that restoration piece that comes with the removal. Is that something that you've experienced as well? With Coal Creek?
Yes. I think we've seen several rounds of concern. First it was the flood, then it was the fire. So we're really working to leverage funds, working with Mile High Flood District Control. So we work with them in partnership to do flood clean out, but I think, as you've said, it's finding the balance between habitat protection and clearing. So after Marshall Fire, Urban Drainage did work from basically rest from Superior down to our golf course, but not the rest of the creek. So that's something we're in conversations with them now to look at doing some initial cleanup potentially through their funding, so that we can come in next round and look at restoration potential after they've done that initial debris removal floodplain. But it is one of those areas for us where there needs to be a lot of collaboration within the city, because it's floodplains, it's public works, it's 401 permits, it's all of the things at once. It's not just open space acting alone. So really trying to get the whole town engaged in that is something we'll likely be working through in this long range planning. I'm sure that's going to come up as a priority.
I have a question, if you don't mind me interjecting real quick. For like specifically like the trail master plan and so forth. I don't, what do you mean?
Setbacks.
Oh, for setbacks for like riparian corridors and trails and so forth. How do we address like habitat and trail, and like, or how do you guys address like how many foot the setback is required? And I'm curious how you guys come up with those numbers, how you look at that for your planning.
Yeah, I'm going to look at our town staff, because I don't even know.
I mean, I think that's a really great question. And it is something that we are also working with Mile High Flood District to do a vegetation plan or revegetation plan along Rock Creek. And they have hired a consultant. And I think this will be the first project of this kind that they've done. We've asked them to extend it to the Coal Creek corridor in the future as funding is available. It'd be great if they could do Coal Creek, just continue east and incorporate your portion of the Coal Creek as well. But they have questions that they don't have answers to yet either, including where should you plant a tree so it's not a problem for flood mitigation in the future? And there's really not an equation for that that exists. So it's going to be something that is going to be created and experimented with over time. Our committee has identified wildlife corridors in town, but we don't have them defined as being this wide or this far from trails, or, we're not going to take trails this close to these wildlife corridors for these reasons. Those are still items that are being explored at this time.
mention that, Leslie, I'm also thinking one thing that has been fantastic about our town staff is they've been very receptive to us when we have those experts, if you will, those volunteer town experts who know where our raptors are nesting or who know specific wildlife, that we've had individuals go walk along with town staff as well as with Mile High to say, we need to preserve this tree. So it's added work, but it's been able to leverage that experience of the wildlife into the equation.
I'm curious if the two towns have ever worked together using a consultant. You know, like you say, you're trying to do repairing and restoration, and of course it doesn't stop at a town boundary. So have the towns ever worked collaboratively to use a consultant for the entire Coal Creek corridor or anything that affects both towns?
I'm not aware of it.
I'm not aware of anything formal. I think we are both in collaboration with the Friends of Coal Creek, and that might be one entity that does tie us together and have, similar goals the entire length of Coal Creek. But as far as actual town work, I am not aware of
The only
any.
thing I'm thinking of is, which wasn't specifically Coal Creek, but we have had partnerships like, a decade ago, we did like a large Russian olive removal countywide. So that was one where we partnered with City of Boulder, Boulder County to get grant funding to look at Russian olive removal, especially in riparian corridors. And we do, with the way Coal Creek was built, it was really built piece by piece. So Boulder County used to oversee it all. And so we do have collaborative meetings with the county and with the joint owners. We used to do a maintenance ride annually to look at issues. But since the flood funding has really split, I would say, to the municipalities to do the maintenance, which isolated us a little bit. So I think there's a lot of opportunity moving forward to bring that collaboration back and look at system-wide, especially where the creek's related in Coal Creek.
I would love to see that.
Because there's definitely, collaboration when it comes to rules, signage. We use the Boulder County signage. We seek permission to use other signage. So we have some collaborative efforts in that way, but nothing on large-scale restoration, I would say.
Well, I really hope that this meeting is the launching point where the board and committee have more robust conversation, so we can at least be in sync. I think that's a great idea about leveraging Mile High, but then also we're both talking to the Friends of Coal Creek, and Rita and we met recently with them. Casey's putting together a stream management plan. Are you familiar with that, or have you already participated?
We have heard that it's coming, but we have not yet seen or participated.
Right, and so that's where
It's in the very early stages.
Okay, I was gonna say, we've heard.
He's just doing the information, collecting it's like 3 phases. Now he's in the interviewing anybody and everybody who has any interest in Coal Creek. And like, he wants to talk to any of the different volunteer committees. Like Joanne, because she's the head of our WET, he's gonna reach out to her, and Lafayette, which is where he's from. But that's phase 1. And then it's trying to get the science behind the information that he gathered in phase.
Well, that sounds like a great starting point too, to engage someone like the watershed folks.
Exactly.
Who do, once they have that baseline information, they're usually happy to work and form, they're great, that's their whole job, is to form the partnerships to do regional projects for waterways, so hopefully that could
Mile High
contribute to
is
something
on his
bigger.
list, and he had a couple of others. I
Right.
don't remember.
But ideally, hopefully that will equal increased funding as well for shared interests.
For sure, I mean, grants always do better when there's partners, so
Yes.
if you can line up 5 towns along a creek, your chances of grant funding are really good. So we'd be open to that.
I know there are a lot of the unknowns right now, but again, I just hope this meeting is that launching point for more collaboration.
Well, one thing that we have done, and it hasn't gone very far yet, is a staff, we have what we call tiger teams, which is our two people from the board who work on a particular theme and do the research and present it to the full board. And we created a Tiger team with Lafayette on issues of mutual importance, and it hasn't officially launched yet, but that might be something that we should do with you guys too.
Absolutely.
Not for Graham's lack of trying.
Well, maybe it needs to start it with Superior, then Lafayette will want it.
Yeah, I'll tell them Superior wants us, so.
Yeah.
Better get on.
We're ditching you first.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because we are a superior partner.
That's a good, I'll use
So, I
that.
mean, honestly, it goes hand in hand with what is our established work plan, and that is to have this level of coordination with our neighbors. And admittedly, we don't always do our best at meeting that objective. And so, you know, what we can do as of, you know, our next meeting's not going to be until January. But we can talk as a committee on who our representative can be, and quite frankly, we'll add that to our agenda item as we move forward into 2026 to say what is the update for our shared, you know, watershed, right? That's easy. The tough part is then just committing to making sure that we meet at least, you know, once a month or every other month or whatever that
Okay, well,
battle
you do that
rhythm
in
would be.
January, we'll do that in January.
Sounds great. Look at us making things happen.
Happening right now.
Another topic that I wanted us to hit on is rodenticides. We have a campaign that has just really started off, team, it's been about a year, maybe, recognizing that rodenticides contribute to really the whole eco chain, right? That's why we're seeing potentially coyotes with mange or owls that are getting sick, I mean, all of that. And so we've launched a campaign predominantly through newsletters and our magazine and social media to combat that. Do you have something similar? And if so, what's working?
Let Susan speak to that since she wrote the memo.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the memo that we.
Yes.
I have not seen it. Oh. It's under here, I will see it.
Okay. So we had the same concerns as an advisory board for how Louisville was managing rodenticides. And the very good news is that the city does not use rodenticides on city-owned property. This kind of came to a head because the Red Tail Ridge developers were not saying that they would not use rodenticides. They weren't committing to avoid rodenticides when they were managing the prairie dog population there. So that was the impetus for us providing this advisory to City Council. And they were very reluctant to implement any sort of ordinance that would affect private property owners. They didn't want to put that burden on private property owners, but they did agree that they would talk to the Red Tail Ridge developers. And I haven't heard any formal decision on this, but the city council member that I spoke to said she thought that the Red Tail Ridge developers had decided not to use rodenticides. I don't know, Adam, if you have any definite news on that?
Yeah, that's the same information I received.
Okay. So we didn't make any progress on getting city council to implement a citywide ban because they just really didn't want to tread on private property rights. So I think that's as far as we're going to get with it. And I don't know what Superior's situation is, if rodenticides are banned in any way.
It's been an education.
It's more consideration. I know town staff, you're thinking about approaching our HOAs. I don't know if that's happened yet. But, you know, in terms of, you know, at least providing residents with information. We've done that at town events, again, newsletters, social media blasts, but then also we're wanting our town staff to coordinate with the different residential HOAs to at least let them know. It's a consideration, but I agree with you that becomes a very tricky part in terms of what will be mandatory.
Well, I really like the idea of at least having an education campaign and reaching out to HOAs is such an effective, cost-effective way to do it. You know, you're reaching a number of people at any one time.
Yeah, part of it is just letting them know there are alternatives
Yeah,
to like
yeah.
the really toxic stuff.
And the town has adopted using
Birth control.
a birth control method that would, as opposed to something that's going to kill the animals in any of the black boxes that you see around, like a Safeway or Costco or something. It's a birth control type method that they're using rather than a lethal method.
And there are even individual homes that have those. We live in the same neighborhood. I sent it out so that, to everybody in our development, the education piece that Tracy has put together. I'm still seeing the black boxes. I don't think they're using the birth control method.
But you're not going to enforce that or
No.
ask, right? No, we wouldn't do that.
But I think Louisville could do more on the education front for sure. So that might be something we put on our work plan for next year.
Yeah, I think the challenge has really been what our purview is as open space versus as a city issue.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the board sort of took it as far as we could to say, we disagree with this use in open space doesn't use it, but then pushing it that next level to be community-wide is a little beyond kind of where our authority is. So it's really been trying to influence the process with education through letters to council.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think you should run the whole city over.
We just mentioned prairie dogs just a moment ago too, and I wanted to share, although she's not with us in person today, Amber Greaves is our prairie dog representative. And she asked that I share with you that our town does have something that we collectively call the prairie dog playbook. We really only have one population of prairie dogs. I know it's much different in Louisville, but for us, we only have one population remaining of prairie dogs. All the others are, quite frankly, on Boulder County open spaces. And the property in particular for us would be Zaharias, so private property in town. And so it's been several years, almost 5 years ago, that as a committee, we started thinking it would be great if we had some sort of document, playbook. So if a property was to be up for sale and an offer granted and development was to come into play, what are those considerations that we would want our town council to be prepared? And so certainly with the reservoir there and potential easements, that all kind of falls into our overall HHR, the reservoir plan. But for the prairie dogs, we realized that the development could come very quickly. And so would we have an opportunity to move those prairie dogs? And if so, how would we do that? And where would they go? Amber has done a lot of work and routinely tracks the availability to go down to Pueblo. That comes with a cost and competition to have access to it. And our town is also looking, because it's more feasible to actually move within the town. And there is a parcel not far from the Colton Trailhead that would be a potential place where we could move. So Amber's question though to you is, do you know what the plan is for, say, the property right off of 80 Redtail Ridge? We were just talking about rodenticides might not be used, but do you know if there is a plan for the prairie dogs?
I haven't seen anything formalized. I will say there's 147 acres, I think is what the total is. It's going to be dedicated as open space, public land, once it's past its warranty period and restored. And those acres will all have our own management plan that will follow open space prairie dog guidelines for things like capacity per acre and those kind of things. But I don't think the property itself or the private property has a management plan as it speaks to prairie dogs. But I know that I can speak to what we're going to get. Our intention would be to align that with what we're doing in all of our other open space property.
Is there any conversation about linking that Redtail Ridge open space with US 36 bikeway at Broomfield? there's a wash where Rock Creek
Yep,
goes
there's a trail connection intention.
There is
through
a
there, and then there's also a connection. I think they went away from going over. I think maybe it is still going over Northwest Parkway from the apartments on the other side, over next to where the fire station is now, and then into the property. So,
Really?
yeah. Last I heard, there was an overpass.
That's the last I've heard.
I don't know where that's at with the players, but the design that the city signed off on as our plat approval included a connection coming from Broomfield across via an overpass, pedestrian overpass. So there will be the connections on both of those sides.
So I have a question. So we're talking a lot about wildlife and prairie dogs and all that. So how does this fit into the wildlife plan of the city of Superior? Like, and how effective do you think that is? Because I think ours is a bit limited in Louisville. So just kind of curious about.
Well, we don't have a wildlife plan per se.
That I saw.
But
They're prairie dog. We were just.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
okay.
prairie
Fair
dog
enough.
plan.
Okay, fair enough.
Although now you're making me think.
Yeah, because I know Lafayette has a really comprehensive one, and so does Boulder. Really good.
Okay.
Really good one. So we've been kind of kicking that idea around.
Yeah.
What
like
is
that.
it? What does it do? How effective is it? All that sort of thing. Where do you
No,
start?
I like that. And to answer the question, as it applies to our prairie dog playbook, we don't know. And so every election, we get new council members, and depending on who's sitting up at the dais, one thing that as a committee we think about is, do we need to take an opportunity to perhaps provide a presentation in some capacity to new council members? Because it's not something that a lot of people think about, right? I mean, it is kind of this niche group of people who want to talk about prairie dogs and how development could impact those colonies. So we don't know. We just realize, and I say we as the royal we, it's Amber. Amber has done so much work to realize that if development were to come, there's just such a small window where the town council can interact through town staff and with the developer to say, these are some considerations we'd like for you to make. I mean, that's our playbook. We don't know. And it also goes into the timing of when that can happen, because I don't know offhand, Amber would know, but there's certain times of year, right?
Yeah.
Team, when the removal to new neighborhoods could even occur, right? To a new colony or whatnot. So we don't know because we've never practiced it. We're hoping that through just the town council being aware that we have this thing, it'll be a consideration. And it's not to say that it will be. We're just hopeful that it will be.
I'd say our practice,
Yeah, I have a question for you on this that's just related to Mark's comments. Some cities have like an action, like a protection, like action plan. For example, like Broomfield has like a wildlife protection action plan. I think that's what they call it. I'm not really sure, but maybe it's a different city. But anyway, the point is, like for raptors protection, right? And that's included like as a subset of their plan. Louisville, we have Bee City and Bird City. I'm wondering if you guys have those kinds of similar documents that identify different, species, so forth, for protection.
Well, so we are a bird city. We also have our migration bird day, migratory bird day. But to answer your specific question, it's to Mark's point, really. We do not have a wildlife plan, a robust wildlife plan, although you've really planted that seed for us. But what we do have is our Raptor program. And again, this is a team of volunteers. We have 50 volunteers in our town who are making observations about raptors. And at the end of every year, the lead coordinator for the Raptor program will provide a summary of results of what we're seeing. It's not a plan, but it does, for instance, share information that, within the last year, actually, between 2024 to 25, we have 15 new raptor species in the town of Superior. And so that information is available, but it's not a plan.
Okay, well, so I mean, do you guys have like any kind of an ordinance or anything like that at the policy level?
No, we just have proclamations for bird days and migratory, No, you're giving us lots of great ideas, though.
Does Louisville have such a thing?
We have an ordinance for, we have an ordinance for harassment of wildlife. So if a dog's off leash or someone is purposefully harassing, shaking a tree with a nest, we can do enforcement on those topics. As far as wildlife management plans, we have a prairie dog management plan, which is quite outdated. In some ways that works really well for us because it gives us a lot of tools to our availability. So we have flexibility to do good management. But that plan is outdated. So it's something I think this board will be looking at following the process. What are the next plans? Do we want to do a wildlife plan or a prairie dog plan? So similar to other entities, we have a lot of one-offs. So we have a raptor program as well. We have a coexisting with coyote programs. We sort of have one-off hot topics that were necessary. So we developed plans around them. And a lot of it is anecdotal information that comes into management, similar to what you were saying, but it's not necessarily a policy.
It's also been interesting just living in Louisville to see how wildlife defeats your best ideas about planning. Like I don't think anybody would have written a bobcat management plan 10 years ago, yet there's bobcat families living in Louisville now.
Right.
And so it's interesting to see about how wildlife
and bears,
right? Yeah, it's a challenging topic.
But I think it's how you look at it too, because as we know, the state has regulatory authority over wildlife. So we have to follow state protocol that exists.
Right.
So, when we look at a management plan, is the goal a coyote management plan, or is it a vegetation plan? Because vegetation protects habitat, which protects the whole umbrella of the ecosystem versus an animal specific, which we actually don't have purview over in the first place to a large extent. We really need to go through the state. Similar with mange or coyote issues, that's mandated through state regulations, not municipal regulations. So it's sort of an interesting interplay how those all nestle together. So when we talk about future management plans, I think it'll be a really interesting topic for our board to sit down and prioritize. Are we talking about a restoration habitat plan or an owl? What are we planning for and what is the most benefit system-wide?
But do check out Lafayette's wildlife plan because it's very robust.
Thank you for that input.
And I think it's on their website.
Yeah, and our prairie dog plan, I think as specific as it gets, is it does designate watchable wildlife areas where we have to maintain the colony. So it says it has to exist, and then there are parameters for which it exists based on carrying capacity.
Well, again, you have so many different areas where
But we do not have, as you're saying, another interesting topic for the board would be a designation area. So I know, similar to you, I'm sure, we've reached out every year for 10 years to see, is anyone accepting donated prairie dogs? The answer has always been no until the Pueblo donation. So we have been donating to Pueblo and the Black-Footed Ferret Foundation for the last 3 years, I want to say. So council supported that even though it was an increased cost. So we do a portion of donation and then a portion of population control that isn't donated.
It'll just be interesting if that applies to Redtail Ridge as well, right?
Well, it'll be interesting because it doesn't exist in our management plan. That's the challenge with our management plan being out of date is it was by property.
Yeah.
So when new properties come on, we have best management practices, but we don't have specific guidelines for new properties saying keep a colony or don't keep a colony. If we keep it, we know what to do, but the yes or no is a different citizen community question.
We've actually covered all of our agenda items, team, so this has been fantastic. But that being said, I do want to give you all an opportunity if there are any other areas that you want to address before we adjourn.
I have just a fun question for you guys. What are your 3 top work plan items on your agenda for next year? We're gonna steal them and put them on ours. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just really curious, like, what is your priority?
I mean, Mike, we have not talked about this as a committee, that's why we're all.
That's fine, I just.
But, yeah, so Mike, you were saying Coyote Ridge is up there. I would also say in there too as a priority with Eagle Creek and Rock Creek in terms of the restoration of habitat and coming up with, really the future plan to strike that balance that we missed out on this last time. But I'm real excited about it. I think those are the tops. Yeah, parsley. And our new wildlife plan, right?
Great, you do yours and then we'll copy yours.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I just truly, I want to thank you all for your time and coming out here today.
Thank you for hosting us and giving us this great dinner.
And I'm serious, I want this to be the beginning of our collaboration. And I know every council changes and every committee changes, or that's how we operate with the flexibility of new people that we see. But let's make it a commitment to move forward and regularly meet with each other and make sure that this isn't a one-off meeting, right?
Assume our city councils also meet. I think when we were talking to them, they were, anxiety might be too strong, but they were concerned that we would be meeting as open space advisory groups, but that we might better be coordinating with them as they meet as adjacent city council. But actually, I didn't learn how much they meet and how much they interact. So, we probably should keep our council updated on the fact that we're meeting and discussing joint things.
Of course.
So that so there's no contradiction built in there.
Of course. But I'll say this committee will have someone who I'm sure after the meeting will say, I'll be the representative, and we'll let you know who that is. And from there, let's plan on, even if it's not January, but a soon meeting in the 2026 timeframe. And those representatives who get together can determine what how frequent we'll be meeting. It might be a quarterly thing, right, as we address these. Mm-hmm. But let's make it happen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
And kudos to you guys for sticking around for the whole meeting.
Yeah. Get a big photo. Made it into the clock and you made it to 8.
Yeah, I am curious. What do you think?
What's your
Our poultry.
What does it look like?
It was just like
Recording stopped.
So for our past IGA.